Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. It's Jerry Miller. It's great to be with you on a Wednesday across Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia. A lot we're going to cover on the program with the native Charlottesvillian, Steve White. This guy bleeds Charlottesville, undoubtedly, and loves the Wahoos, loves our community, just absolutely a huge fan of being in this community in CVille, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia. We're going to spotlight Steve White and everything he's about here on the I Love CVille Show. We're going to talk real estate. We'll talk entrepreneurship. We'll talk about how he's seen this community evolve and change. And not just Charlottesville. I think we need to talk about Crozet as well. Crozet, in the last, 10, 15, 20 years, a completely different market. I mean, it is utterly booming. Now, if we can work on the roads getting to and from Crozet, that I think might be the next step, is the road infrastructure. We'll talk about that with Steve White. Give the show a like and share, whatever channel you're watching here on the I Love CVille Network. We would certainly appreciate that. This show, thanks to the fine folks at Greenberry's Coffee. For roughly 28 years, Sean and Roxanne Simmons have taken a dream of creating a craft coffee shop and made it a reality. And today, Greenberry's Coffee is a global business. I'm talking locations in Japan, locations in Qatar, Saudi Arabia. They're about to open in Portland, Oregon, and it started here in Charlottesville. They have Washington, D.C., they have Harrisonburg. I mean, just a fantastic entrepreneurial success story, the kind we love to celebrate here on the I Love CVille Show. I also want to give some big-time props to my friend, our client, Dr. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Who's got your back? Scott Wagner's got your back. He's been changing people's lives, guys, at his practice, and I have seen it firsthand, literally impacting the quality of life of thousands of patients across Central Virginia. Scott Wagner, Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. On that note, Harris Tolber is our director. Judah Wickhauer, Lauren Litsky helping make this program possible. Why don't we, Harris Tolber, go to the studio cam, sir, and we will welcome Steve White to the show. Steve, I first want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Truly a pleasure. I immediately could tell in the 15 minutes that we spent off air that we have a lot of similarities. Very high energy.
I would agree.
We love people. I feel like oftentimes we could recharge by being around people and our friends. I just love being in social settings. We work hard, probably play hard.
Agree. 100% agree.
Love the orange and blue and anything UVA related, and certainly have a tremendous admiration for Charlottesville and Central Virginia. I'm going to start with an open-ended question for you.
Sure.
Who is, and this is not professional, this is personal here.
Sure.
Who is Steve White the man, his hobbies, his personal interests, his passions, what he likes to do, how he likes to spend his most precious commodity, his time?
Wow. That's an open-ended question, but first and foremost is family. I love spending time with my two kids, Luke, who's 20, and my daughter, who's 16, and at Western Albemarle, Catherine Ann, and my girlfriend and her two children that we all live out in Crozet and enjoy one another. Blair actually works with me and is my assistant, and wouldn't be as successful as I am without her, and helping, of course, with raising her two boys as well. So that's me in a nutshell. And besides that, love serving my clients and customers and doing the best job I can.
I love it. I love it. Let's create a sizzle reel for that, Harris Tolber. It's a highlight from one of our shows that we'll send to you. You were telling me off air, born in Martha Jefferson. Martha
Correct.
Jefferson on High Street.
Martha Jefferson on High Street.
Talk to me about that. Born in Martha Jefferson, your kids born in Martha Jefferson. You have Charlottesville in your blood.
Yes, born and raised here. Actually, my son was born in that same hospital, and then my daughter, who was 3 years later, she was born at the newer hospital. But overall, we have enjoyed living here in the Charlottesville area. Besides going to college, I've been here my whole life, and absolutely, there's nothing I can say negative about Charlottesville in the area.
I feel the same. Let's talk about Charlottesville and how you've seen it evolve. And I'll start open-ended and then get into specifics here. You're raising your family here. You're running your business here, very similar to me here. How have you seen open-ended Charlottesville evolve in your time here in CVille?
Wow. I mean, from the time I was born, which given away too much of my age, at 1965, the changes here in Charlottesville are just dramatic. I mean, all for the good, I would say. I mean, the university continues to grow, and as it grows, I think Charlottesville grows, to be quite honest about it. And I think that we've been blessed. I lived in Charlottesville for quite some time before I had children, then moved out to Crozet in 1998 to raise my family, and it's been great ever since then.
Do you think, I want to ask you about the UVA, and I totally agree. As UVA expands, it seems to gobble up a little bit more of Charlottesville each time. I'm talking about, whether it's the neighborhoods,
Right.
whether it's the buildings, and UVA's tentacles will continue to expand because, let's be honest, the #1 public university in the country here.
Correct.
And it's kind of like a catch-22, a double-edged sword. It's good for the area because more jobs are being created.
Right, correct.
The flip side of the coin is it takes away some of the character and the old guard of Charlottesville that I think we truly love. Talk to me about that point.
That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, when I remember growing up in Charlottesville felt like more of a town than a city. And as we've evolved and Charlottesville gets bigger and UVA gets bigger, I mean, I think we've evolved into a much larger city per se. I miss things from when I was little. You could walk in certain stores and people know who you are and know that. That's kind of disappeared a little bit. But still, the one thing I notice about Charlottesville with my clients and my customers, and everybody says how friendly people are here in this area. And I think that's one thing that's unique for Charlottesville, where I live in Crozet and other areas, that people from outside this area come here and they're very, very excited about the fact that how friendly people are and how beautiful the area is, and it sells itself. We don't have to really sell Charlottesville.
And talk to me about Charlottesville when you grew up. Where'd you grow up in Charlottesville? What are some of your fantastic memories of CVille growing up as a boy? I mean, different times where you could probably walk, ride your bike anywhere you want. Parents probably didn't worry so much as parents do now. My son just turned 1.
Right.
And I'm just this little guy here that I am, and you have older kids. Okay.
Right.
I am just I do not want a single bad thing to ever happen to him ever.
Very understandable. I think we as parents all go through that. I think that, the biggest thing that I've seen with Charlottesville, as I was saying earlier, is I love the evolution that with the growth that we've seen in the area and the expansion we've seen in the area, it hasn't changed that much. That's the best part, is that the people here seem to be genuine, and the people here, and from my experience living here, I wouldn't live anyplace else in the country.
Same.
I've had some pretty high-profile clients over the years that could live anywhere in the world, and when I ask them, what makes you choose Charlottesville? And a lot of them will come at because I'm not picked out as being special, that I can walk in Foods of All Nations or go in another store, and I might be famous as far as the world's concerned, but I can walk in there and people say, hey, how are you? And it's not, nobody's starstruck here,
right?
which is a wonderful quality, I think.
I totally agree, and you've touched on it. It's it has a level of intimacy, but it has the same cosmopolitan feel that we like, in that there's the music scene. There's more restaurants per capita in Charlottesville than any city in the country except San Francisco and New York City.
Wow.
Corn Capshaw and the music scene are dynamite.
Without a doubt.
The ACC sports that we absolutely love.
Without a doubt.
The outdoors. I mean, I love the downtown mall. I just love this downtown mall. How about as a youth? What did you like to do as a kid in Charlottesville?
Well, Charlottesville didn't have quite as many opportunities as it does now, but I mean, sports. I mean, I was a sports kid, so all my time outdoors was involved with either playing a sport or hiking or fishing or hunting. We didn't get to spend a lot of time inside just watching TV and stuff. I grew up just 6 miles south of Charlottesville in a little subdivision called Sherwood Farms.
Okay.
And
I know where Sherwood Farms is.
You know where Sherwood Farms is?
I live in Redfields.
Redfield, so you're backs up to it.
Yeah,
actually.
so there's a home that, as the crow flies, is 100 or 150 yards up the hill. I live on Rockledge, so up the hill from me. But that home is not in Redfields. It's in Sherwood Farms.
It's in Sherwood Farms.
Yeah,
and that was developed in the 1950s. My grandparents decided to move there, and that's where I spent my life. I mean, and the funny thing is, I laugh at my kids now when they've got 2,000 TV stations to look at. I grew up with 3 channels. You had 3. You had NBC, ABC, and NBC. It was in college that I actually ran into actually being able to see cable and get to watch ESPN. So there's been a lot of changes, and that was the biggest thing, is that I didn't get to spend a lot of time indoors, and I didn't want to spend time indoors. So I wanted to be out I wanted to be outdoors, and I wanted to do things that involved. I love fishing. I love being hiking. I love golf. That's another one of my passions. So
where would you fish and hike growing up around there?
Well, I did a lot of hiking in the Shenandoah Valley, in the mountains.
Okay.
humpback,
Love
typical place
humpback.
where a lot of people go. A lot of fishing just throughout. I mean, the James River, the Rockfish River, did a lot of trout fishing growing up. So over in Bath County on the Jackson, the bull pasture, the cow pasture, just getting ready to go Friday to do more of that. So
I love it. And we're kind of talking about what we call either the birth story or the evolution of Steve White and our guests from kid to man to professional. And then from there, you migrated to some time at VCU.
I went to VCU for a while and got out of that and ended up coming back to Charlottesville and got married, raised my kids, and started my career with Roy Wheeler back in 1993, and I've been there for 26 years.
Debbie Gibson Dedamore says, "Hey, Steve."
Hey, Debbie, how are you today?
Guys, if you have a comment, question, if you want to relay something to Steve White, I'm happy to do it. Put it in any chat box that you're watching here on the I Love CVille Show. If you could give the stream a like and share, that would mean the world to us. When did you start realizing that? Because you got the gift of, and I see this, I got this gift, you got this gift, and when you see it in other people, you notice it right away. It's the gift of human connection.
Right.
You probably can go into a room right away and get people to, people like you right away. You're going to bring in a sense of energy where, you're there. People often say, you're not the tallest guy in the room, but for some reason, you're the biggest guy in the room. When personality-wise.
Right.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, I just like people, and I like meeting new people. I've always been that way. I'm very social. Love hanging out with, like I said, with my family before, but also, I've got a strong network of friends that, that I've had since I've been in business, but also I've got a strong network of friends that are from high school that we're very close, and we still stay in close contact with one another. We play golf. We get together. We go to Crozet Pizza, hang out. We're meeting tonight to do our picks for the NCAA. So it's just I have nothing negative to say about my life and what I've been able to do here in the Charlottesville area.
What's your order at Crozet Pizza?
My order, I'm a big sausage guy, so anything with meat on it. I love their pizzas, and their sandwiches are fantastic too. So
Me too.
Literally walking distance for me
From Crozet?
Mm-hmm.
Crozet Pizza, that's awesome. How about Crozet? You like the change you've seen over there? I mean, Crozet almost is like, I'm getting, I'm make a correlation here, and you're more of an expert than I am. Crozet reminds me today in a lot of ways of what maybe Charlottesville was when you were growing up, where it's got that sense of small town intimacy. Everybody knows everybody. Now it's starting to boom, man.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to a different level.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, we moved there 20 years ago to get away from Charlottesville. Nothing against Charlottesville.
Sure.
But just wanted to get out in the country, and we wanted to get in the Albemarle County school systems and pick Crozet as that place to go. There's a lot of positives with what's going on in Crozet, but you brought on my biggest fear with everything that we've done out there and the way things are growing is the infrastructure behind it. Other than that, everybody has their own personal ways on where they want to live and how they want to live. And I'm sorry to see Crozet change so much, but then again, it's home. And the traffic has changed dramatically over the last 15 years, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'd like to see a little bit of infrastructure brought in and what they're going to do as that continues to change.
I mean, I feel like that's one of the the obvious things, right? I mean, why are there two roads to get into Crozet and that's it?
Well, only two roads to get in, and I mean, you can still come up, I guess, Garth Road
Right,
and come
you
in
come
that
up
way,
Garth
but
Road.
I mean,
You backdoor it.
But you backdoor it. I mean, it's gotten so bad on 250. I actually recommend to my 16-year-old daughter, I'd much rather her drive into town on 64 versus 250 because I just worry about the traffic flow on 250 and it being a two-lane road and somebody not paying attention to what they're doing.
Your buddy, and you're going to have to help me with his last name, Will Schmertzler.
Will Schmertzler.
Will Schmertzler says, "Hey, Steve, you're looking sharp. Tell him about them Tar Heels."
We're not going to talk about the Tar Heels, Mr. Schmertzler. I just talked to Will right before I came here. He's a close friend of mine. He's down visiting his daughter down in Orlando, and we have a friendly rivalry. We live in the same neighborhood and been friends for over 20 years. One of my closest, dearest friends. So.
I can really tell friends, and it means so much to you.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Friends and family are what I'm about. We had a close friend of ours pass away a couple years ago, and a group of us from high school just got together last year and put together a golf tournament for him. And it's Troy Durham Memorial Golf Tournament, and we did it last year at the beginning of April. We're scheduled to do it again mid-May this year, and we're just really excited about it because all the proceeds are going towards he has a 17-year-old son and a 11-year-old son, and we tried to do something. He was a great basketball player here in Central Virginia. Actually had the Western scoring without a three-point shot. He had that record up until like 3 years ago, which is
Darren wasn't the
unbelievable.
coach then, was he?
No, not
Okay.
Darren was not the coach back when
Okay.
Troy was playing, but Troy Durham is the name of the guy I'm speaking about, and Troy was a wonderful athlete, and unfortunately succumbed to some terrible disease, and we lost him last year. But we're trying to make a good out of a bad, and hosting this tournament for his kids, and it's just been wonderful. We made over $10,000 last year for his kids for their college education, and hope to do the same thing this year. So.
That's awesome. Let me throw this to you. As a realtor and a successful one, a very successful
Well,
one.
thank you.
Okay, very successful one. Aren't you torn because the happiest place, the number one place to live in this country, Charlottesville gets dubbed that all the time.
Without a doubt.
That's brought a lot of what I like to call, and my wife's a Yankee, so I'm gonna get in a little trouble right here. That's brought a lot of Yankee money
Without a doubt.
to Charlottesville and Central
Without a
Virginia.
doubt. Without a doubt.
And I think what that has done is that's raised the quality of life, the cost of living here. It's made homes more expensive. Good for you professionally.
Correct.
How about from a personal standpoint? Do you get torn on that topic?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I have people from all over the country that contact me about wanting to move to this area. Just even yesterday, I was with a couple from Nebraska. So it's wherever you're from, we're here to serve you. But I think that, more importantly, I do see changes. I mean, and real estate's challenging. I tell newer agents that come into our office that, every single transaction you work on is a learning experience. And some of those are really good learning experiences. Some of them are painful, but they're learning experiences. And if you categorize things that way and you learn something from something that was a negative, then it's a positive. So I've had difficulties with people from all walks, but, for the most part, I have great relationships that last past the closing date on most of my transactions, where I stay in touch with my clients and find out how they're doing and get to see them raise their family. So it's been a really rewarding career for me.
I love that. That's a sizzle reel, Harris, right there. Rewarding career, undoubtedly. How did Charlottesville, when it started getting dubbed, USA Today and all these national publications, best place to live in America, how did that change the game?
Wow. And, we've been up there for so long. That's a good question. But obviously, giving away my age again, I've been here for 26 years selling real estate. And it definitely has had a major impact on the area, because especially when we were in that hot market in the mid-2000s, I mean, we had especially we'd just gotten past 9/11. There were a lot of people that were living, I think, in big cities that were realizing that, wow, this maybe is not my style or where I want to be. So it brought just an unbelievable amount of people looking for property in this area. It just really changed. And I don't know when I say it changed, I just mean that the focus on Charlottesville just totally changed, in the sense that at first it was like, well, I want to move to Charlottesville because I used to go to school here. Now it's people, because of all that publicity, I want to come and see Charlottesville because I'm hearing all these good things about it. So on the business front, I think
Did it make your business boom?
Without a doubt. I think
Yeah.
I think it made everybody that's a realtor here in Charlottesville, it helped all of us overall. So no negatives about that. I mean, I think there's not a realtor that would be honest sitting here saying we haven't had a difficult client. The difference in that is how you work through those problems and how you handle those people.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean, there's some people that have difficult clients that can, it's just impossible for them to deal with, so they put them astray. I'm always a guy that's trying to figure out a way to solve the problem and
For everybody.
for everybody. You know, and I think that's our job. Our job is to facilitate and find people, whether they're buyers or sellers, sellers trying to sell their property, buyers trying to find the right fit. And I think it's really, really important to keep that in focus. And I think as long as you keep in focus what your clients' needs are, everything works out fine. Those difficult situations you run into, as you gain experience, you learn how to deal with those experiences. Because I deal a lot with land development.
I was going to ask you about that. Talk to me about that. I love this part of the game.
Well, I mean, I just got really lucky. When I first started in real estate, I had the good fortune to work with who was at our point as our top producing agent, who's still with our company, Jim Bonner. And my career is where it is because of that. And Jim taught me the right way to do things and taught me how to market. And most importantly, he was more into the farm and estate market. And at that time in the real estate market, there was a big change. When you were selling land, a lot of the land contracts and land listings were at 5%. where the residential stuff was at 6%. And being the businessman I was like, well, wait a minute here. I can work just as hard to sell one thing, but land sometimes takes a lot longer because you've sometimes have to get soil work done, surveys done, those type of things. But sometimes you got rewarded more for the work that you put into it. So it became kind of a passion of mine, and I've helped several. I've worked with a former athletic trainer with UVA that he and I are real close friends. Joe Geek.
I bought this place from Joe Geek.
Did you really?
Yeah, I got a seller FI deal going on where I send him a check every month. I see Joe Geek at ACAC
That's
daily.
That's great. Joe's
He's great people.
Close friend of mine.
So the farm that he has off, is it 20, right over there on Monticello?
He's over on 53.
53, that's right.
Wentworth Farm.
Yeah.
He left today. I think he had something to do down in Dallas. I was with him yesterday, but he and I have been really close, and he likes
Small world.
He likes to dabble in finding small parcels, and then we'll take them, and then we'll take it from what it is and develop it into parcels.
He's an entrepreneur.
Very much so, and I'm very blessed to have him as a client.
Yeah,
and a friend.
Yeah,
more than importantly,
he's a good guy, and he was honestly like just a very easygoing guy to do the deal with. I mean, I think he's just like a straight shooter. What you see is what you get,
without a doubt.
And in a lot of ways, what I felt when doing the deal, he's like, life has been good to him, and he was like, life's been good to me, Jerry. I want to give you a shot here.
Well, and he's just an overall outstanding individual, and I think the world of him. I kid around with Blair, my girlfriend and assistant, all the time that he's like a surrogate grandfather, because there are things that come up in life that sometimes I'll run by him because I trust his word and I trust what he has to say, and he has good advice.
Now, the land piece, I mean, I look at it like this, and I love learning.
Right.
Okay. And when I get to do this, and pretty much as the owner of an advertising agency, I meet 5 to 6 people a day.
Sure.
And these people could be, from the C-suite of their business. They could be people launching a company. They could be the head of a nonprofit. And every day I feel like I'm getting an MBA's kind of knowledge from their respective business.
Understand.
And then I'm able to apply it to another client to help them out, just like you with your real estate career.
Perfect.
You learn everything. So here's where I'm going with this. From the land piece, being in the land game and trading land or helping people buy and sell land, maybe the category is not nearly as competitive from agents that are in that space. But you've already touched on the difficult aspects of it is there's not a home there.
Right,
so it's difficult for people to envision perhaps themselves there because they have to make it a reality oftentimes for themselves. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, just to give a quick example, I mean, bringing up Joe again, Joe and I found a piece of land up in Madison County that was fronted on 2 roads, which means we didn't have to do right-of-ways, we didn't have to do anything, and I brought it to Joe's attention, and he said, yep, I like that one. Let's do that. He does a lot of stuff, and I do this with several clients that do 1031 tax-deferred exchanges.
Sure.
Where they've sold a property that was a investment, and then they've got 45 days to identify another property, and then they've got 180 days to close. So I have a lot of people that will call me and say, hey, I've gotten this, I've got a 1031, I got 45 days, what can you find me? And, and sometimes it can be another house, sometimes it can be another land. This particular case was a piece of land, and we were able, Madison County doesn't like a lot of development, so going through that process, I warned Joe, we're going to be several weeks, maybe months before we're going to get approval from them. And we got through the process, and it took some time, but I mean, we ended up with this 14-acre parcel that we were able to divide into 4 parcels, had soil work done on each one of them. We had a well on one, and then we got 4 different individuals to find. I mean, it took about 1.5 years to sell all 4 of them, but we got all of them sold for him.
That's awesome. That's a success story.
Without a doubt. And that's only one with him. He's had several of them we've worked on that he's done really well on.
What's the pressure like with a 1031 exchange? 45 days ain't much time.
Well, 45 days, you just have to identify something.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that you have to buy it. It's just identify it that you're going to buy it. And then from there, you've got 180 days to close. So
understood.
You can get something under contract where you put what we call a study period, where you gives you whatever you agree to within the contract, 30, 60, 90 days, where you can look over what you want to do and make sure that way your client can get out of it if it doesn't work for them and move forward. So I enjoy selling land. I enjoy selling farms. But the bread and butter in my business is selling residential property, without a doubt. I love selling land. When the market crashed in 2008, I was more of a farm and estate agent, and I realized with the way the market was changing, I need to kind of rebrand myself. And so I did a really good...
That's a supply and demand.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get out of the business, and I knew that there had to be a change in order for me to be successful. And so I worked real hard on recreating a web page and making sure that all my friends and family and former clients knew that, hey, I can help you with that residential home along with selling that land and that farm as well.
How did that rebranding process take? I mean, was it did you feel like you had to swallow a little pride right there, or did you have to go?
Good question.
I have to pivot to adapt to the market.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had to pivot because I started seeing not close friends, but people that I knew were selling homes and not getting in touch with me, and I was like, what is going on? And I don't have any problem calling people and not being adversarial, but saying, why didn't you use me? And they're like, well, we just thought you worked on farms. And I was like, no, that's not the case. So I just worked on that aspect of it and made sure that people understand. I mean, somebody asked me last year.
I struggle with that.
Well, I do too. And I had somebody ask me last year, said, what was your range of sales? And I said, well, I sold something at $40,000. I sold something at $2.3 million. That's a big gap. So it's just, if you're asking me average, that's a different story. But I mean, it just depends on what the client needs, and we help them the best we can.
So I'm learning from you now, and you, Linda Bach is giving you some props.
Tell Linda Bach hello.
She says, way to go, Steve.
Thank you, Linda. Good to see you and hear from you. Tell Steve I said hello.
This is what I struggle with. Is we're 11 years into this game in May. Wow. And when I talk about this, mention it to you off air, I remember the first 7 months of launching this business, no clients. Mm-hmm. Literally pulling up sofa cushions at my friends' houses in Belmont, looking for $1.03 and change for a double cheeseburger.
Wow. Or
or going to the Panda Garden buffet outside Lambeth Commons and stealing food from the buffet for myself and my dog for 2 days in Ziploc bags.
Wow.
And then did well by one. That person told somebody else, just like you,
right.
Word of mouth. And then we get to the point where we're doing, we're humming. Right. We're humming. And then folks often are saying to me well, you're working with Intrastate Pest and Service Companies and the Dr. Scott Wagners and the Greenberries and the Roy Wheelers here. I didn't think you were still in the business of helping take companies to market and helping entrepreneurs launch their business and have their dream. And I was like, whoa. What are you talking about here? I want to help everybody.
Right.
And that's kind of, and throwing it back to you here,
right.
That's what you were talking about.
Well, it's the kind of same thing. And, you just, you roll with the market that you're in. And, I'd begun my career with Jim Bonner, and he was more of a farm and estate agent. And,
he was the farm and estate, right?
I think he was our top producing agent for almost
quintessential
20 years.
one.
Oh, yeah. He was, and he does things the right way and treats people the right way. And that's, more important to me is at the end of the day when we're done with the transaction.
Same.
I can look myself in the mirror and know that I did a good job. And Jim taught me, like I said, marketing, and just taught me how to relate, and more importantly, how to deal with the complex stuff we got in different real estate transactions. Because you think you know it all until something shows up in a real estate transaction. You go, I haven't seen that before, and that happens all the time.
Yeah,
without a doubt. And you just gotta. You go and find the answers and give the right advice when that stuff, you'd be surprised. There's, every day I'm in real estate, I would say I learned something from somebody.
That's awesome. And that's going to be invigorating for you.
It is, because it's when I decided I wanted to do this as a career, I knew it was going to be, I didn't want to do it for 2 or 3 years. I wanted to make a career out of it. So it's passion. I really do. I love helping people, and I love trying to find the right things for them.
What was the aha moment when you're like, you know what? I'm really good at this. Did you have one of those? A lot of people do.
I didn't really have an aha moment. I think the biggest thing where I kind of knew that I was going to be able to make it was probably about 5 years into it, when I really started working with Jim, and I started.
So you're mid-20s here.
Mid-20. I started, I think, at 27. So this is probably right at 30. It was before I had children, and I just remember. I'd been working really hard with Jim, and I just remember sitting back one night and going, I think I've finally made it. I think I'm not worried about paying my next bill. I'm not worried. So, in real estate is like any other job that you're in that you're getting commission. I mean, it's up and down, but you as you get older, you learn to manage and figure out how to do things. And if you don't need to buy that cheeseburger, you don't buy it. You wait when you have the money. I mean, it's just, real estate is a funny animal, and a lot of people, it's tough to get into and tough to get started, but once you get your feet ground and you do the right marketing, you can be successful in it without a doubt.
Your buddy John Updike is giving you props on your hair. He says you're looking good.
John, I'm not usually out without a hat on, so that's a good thing. Thanks for the props. Appreciate it.
Jay Dominic, Movement Mortgage, says you're looking really sharp. He says, hello, Steve.
Thank you, Jay. I'll see you at the office later, bud.
Let me throw this to you. The challenges of the farm and estate sales. Now, the pie at the end of the transaction is a much bigger pie.
Correct.
Okay, that's safe to say. Yeah.
Very, very safe to say.
The supply of buyers is much more narrow than the
Correct.
supply of buyers of a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 home.
Correct.
And I follow the MLS closely. I love the real estate piece, passion of mine. The million-plus homes, they ain't trading as fast as they used to.
Correct.
Fair?
Very fair.
Okay.
Very fair.
Talk to me about the trials, the tribulations, the successes, the challenges of farm and estate game.
Wow. I think when we crashed, I always say 2008, 2009. If there's one area of the market, then there might be agents out there that disagree with this, but if there's one area in the market that I haven't seen come back to its full nature, is the high-end farm and estate market and the land market. And I think, number one, I think the land market's affected because there's a lot of resale property on the market, so therefore that has impact on people wanting to go out and build a new home and have to start that whole process. And I think overall, I think the biggest change that I have seen in terms of that is that the high-end real estate, we've seen some prices, and I'm not going to name properties, but properties that, in 2006, 2007 were trading, some of them in the upper, 8 million to 12 million. Those same properties are now selling for 4 to 5 million. And I think that's just the nature of the market and the way things work. I mean, I would never be quoted as saying it'll never come back, but I don't think it's going to be a while before we see that market flourish. I also see a total change in the demographics of the buyers out there. I mean,
well, the buyer now, and educate me, the buyer now, even the deep-pocketed buyer, even perhaps the empty nester that's sitting on a nice sum,
right,
is a different mindseted buyer that wants to be closer to amenities in downtown, perhaps where he or she is able to walk to the restaurants, walk to the Paramount, walk to the Pavilion.
Very good point.
Yeah, as opposed to looking for that privacy and space. Like, when I got my house in Redfield, one of the things that appealed to me is I could be buck naked on my deck and no one can see me. Maybe the guy on Sherwood Manor can see me.
Right.
But nobody else. Okay.
Right.
The buyer, the mindset has changed.
Totally changed. I think that what we've seen, especially with, we're in a new generation of buyers now. I mean, I've been in this for 26 years, and we're seeing a lot more people that have money that would much rather be downtown Charlottesville and everything that Charlottesville offers. They want to be close to downtown mall, all the food, all that. Actually, so you could have a buyer that's, well above $1 million mark that would much rather have a home right here in the city of Charlottesville versus a farm that's 20 minutes outside of Charlottesville.
What do you attribute that to? I attribute it, and this is like sociology, a little anthropology here. I attribute it to the ubiquitous nature of smartphones. And now that everybody has iPhones and Droids, they are so used to getting things immediately. The immediacy of things because of this. As a result, it's made time much more of a commodity, and people understand that it is their most precious commodity.
Right.
And perhaps that 30-minute drive from the farm to the mall is a barrier of entry to the farm and estate sales.
And I agree with you. When I moved to Crozet 20 years ago, I was recommended, say, you don't want to live out there. That's too far of a drive. So I understand what you're saying. I think it's just a total change in, I think, the younger buyer that's out there. I just don't think they're interested in the upkeep of some of the larger properties that we offer for sale. There's still buyers out there for those properties, but the young millennial crowd, I think they'd much rather have a condo downtown and spend their $1 million on that versus, and I'm not speaking for everybody,
yeah,
but
general terms.
But general terms,
yeah.
But then have a 500-acre farm that they've got to maintain and take care of. I think it's overwhelming for the younger crowd to even think about, what's going to cost me to upkeep all that.
What? Let me throw this to you here. What do you think market conditions or external forces that could potentially help the farm and estate game return to its old glory?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it's the market itself.
Uh-huh.
And I think unless there's a shift in the market where we have more buyers that are looking for that product, people looking for more product means more product comes on the market, economics. So I think that, real good question. I think it's just going to be a simple fact that some people that are closer to my age and a little bit younger are deciding they don't want to be downtown. They want to get some space and they want to have places that they can roam and have a good time. Totally different. I mean, I live on 3/4 of an acre, and have a baseball field behind me, so it feels like more. So, yeah. And I don't have covenants restrictions. I don't have an HOA where I live. Other neighborhoods in Crozet obviously have that. It's a lifestyle. I think It's just what you want and what's important for your family.
We got the half acre, but it backs up to the preserve protected property in Redfields. So you're able to enjoy that, whatever, 700 acres without paying the real estate taxes on it, which is nice. Which is nice. Let me throw this to you. The city of Charlottesville is landlocked, 10.27 square miles. And constantly the affordable housing thing is in the news.
Yes,
it
is.
How the heck are we going to, and I'm not asking you to solve this. I'm just talking spitballing in general terms here for you. Like, I mean, there is a finite amount of inventory in Charlottesville.
Without a doubt. Especially in the city of Charlottesville.
Especially in the city of Charlottesville.
Without a doubt.
Everybody now, the mindset, as we've pointed, is millennials and empty nesters. They want to live in the city. So there's more demand for this finite amount of inventory than ever. Like, what is going to happen here? It seems like we have a collision of a lot of different forces here.
Once again, you're throwing some really good questions out. I think that I know that new development that's going up there, that there's a lot of push to include affordable housing, and I think it's a really important component. I mean, you don't want your teachers and your school teachers, your police force having to live 40 miles away just to find some place they can live in. It concerns me when I saw the average price per house in the city of Charlottesville last year was close to $500,000. It's a big question that I don't have the answer for, other than the fact that I know that developers are being pushed to make, when they're making a development, to make part of it more affordable for housing, and I hope that the people will look at that and take heed to it and remember that it's great to make a profit, but there are people that we rely on that are important within the city of Charlottesville that we want to have close. We don't want them, you don't want every teacher to have to drive 40 miles to get to work.
It's such a.
Or they're going to find another place to work.
So I struggle, and you're getting a lot of props here. Let's first, your colleague Shar says this is from Roy Wheeler.
Okay.
Says this is very informative. I moved to CVille 5 years now ago, and the finest people live here. I see unity and diversity in this town. Steve, you're doing an excellent job. Ray Cadell, who watches this show all the time, good friend of this program, he says the average real estate licensee who actually affiliates with the company lasts 5 years. 26 years by Steve is incredibly impressive.
You tell Mr. Ray I've known him for 26 years, and I thank you very much, Ray, and think the world of you, and you've been at it longer than I have.
He is a good man.
He's a very good man. I've known Ray. Ray, I met him real early in my career, and him and Pat Burns, and think the world of both of them.
Talk to me about, John wants to say, are you still coaching Little League Baseball?
Good question. I miss coaching Little League Baseball. When my son turned 4, the Little League out in Crozet, Peachtree, was there, and I jumped in, of course, with my son because I love sports, and started out an assistant coach, and very quickly after the second year, I was like, guess what? You can be a head coach. So,
right. You're an alpha dog.
And I really didn't mind being the assistant. I really didn't, but I coached him, I guess, for 10 years, all the way up until he went to Greenwood, and we was playing, 13-year-old ball where we were actually playing on 90-foot bases and pitching from 62 feet. So I've got a daughter that's a junior, and when she gets out of school, we might revisit that and maybe go back and do a little bit of coaching because I really enjoyed it.
Would you recommend a young dad like, now my kid's 1, so I got a little while.
It'll go by quickly, I promise you.
Oh my God, dude, the first year I felt like it's been 10 minutes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I promise you, the 20 years.
It sounds like a cliche, right? But really, I'm living it.
An older gentleman told me when my son turned 5, and I was all excited about him going to kindergarten. I was just really excited about it because it's such a cool time for kids to start school and everything. He goes, be careful what you want, what you're looking for. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he looked at me, he goes, that time is going to go by in a snap of a finger. And I can tell you, after watching him graduate from high school in 2017, it went by like a snap of a finger. So,
would you recommend to the young dad to get involved from a coaching standpoint? Like, dude, this has been before. I need you to give you a little background on me. Like, most competitive guy you're going to meet, like, love competition.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like maybe from time to time take it too far.
Understand.
Yeah, but in most settings, it's an asset.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes it can be a disadvantage.
Sure.
Give me some advice.
My best advice was the biggest thing that I had, you treat your kids the way you treat your kids. And I was bound and determined when I got to coaching that I would never, there was enough coaches that I knew that, showed favor, not necessarily just in Peachtree, but just watching Little League in general, that showed favoritism towards their kids or certain kids that they had likes. And I was just bound and determined from the beginning that I was going to treat every kid fairly. And My son had some major disagreements with me on that when he wanted to pitch and he wasn't ready to pitch. But in the long run, it turned out great. Have no negative, biggest thing is parents to deal with in regards to that, and being able to communicate with them. And, everybody thinks their kid's going to be the next Cal Ripken, but sometimes you have to say, well, that's great, but right now they're scared to death of the ball. We might need to move them rather than sitting on shortstop to the outfield so they don't get killed.
See, I would struggle with this, and we get some questions coming in here via Instagram direct message, and I'm going to get to these here shortly.
Sure.
I would struggle with, and I know there's different levels, and in the beginning, it's about everybody getting some playing time. Okay.
Correct.
And as we get to middle and high school, it becomes a little bit more about you got to play the players who put in the work that are oftentimes the better players.
Correct.
I would struggle with not trotting out the best team possible.
Well, and the good thing about most of these leagues now, they got things in place where they do diversity in the team, so we don't have one team stacked that everybody loses to them by 20 runs every game. We did a lot of good stuff when I was on the board with the local Peachtree to make sure that it's fair for everybody. But, the bottom line is that, even when my kids were young, at 7 years old, there are some people out there that believe it's just for playing and, it doesn't matter who wins or lose. I'm sorry. I grew up in a family that, you do everything to try to do the best you can do at it.
Right.
And
that's how I am.
And I know when we were coaching in rookie ball, it was really funny because we were, we don't keep score. We don't keep score. Well, I can tell you one thing. There wasn't a kid of the 11 or 12 kids that were on my team that didn't know what the score was in that game. They knew whether they were winning and they knew whether they were losing. So in my perspective, I think it's a better lesson to teach kids, the right ways to win and the right ways to lose rather than saying there are no winners. I can't remember that movie with Billy Crystal and where he was the grandfather and he's talking to the kids and the baseball coach or the baseball manager and I guess it was an umpire and he goes, "What do you mean there's no winners?" And it's just like, you don't play baseball not to have a winner, and it was just a really good, and it's kind of the way I feel, but
sure.
I want the kids to have a good time. That's the most important thing more than anything, that they have a good time and they enjoy themselves while they're there.
What you said is I was literally asked this question a few days ago, and it was literally everything I try to do, I want to be the best at.
Without.
I want to put the effort in. I love the process of becoming the best. I love practice.
Oh, me too. Without a doubt.
Picked up racquetball, 18, 19 months ago. Number 1, number 2, depending on the day in the area now.
Nice.
And where I'm going with this was the question that was asked. Is it not exhausting wanting to be the best at everything you do? And then I struggled with it. And it's
a good question.
How about with you? Because you embody the same.
I think as you get older, with me especially, you're going to win some things, you're going to lose some things, and once again, it's the learning experience from if I'm competing against somebody on a listing and I lose it, I don't just say, "Oh gosh, I lost it." I usually try to find out, well, what could I have done better? What could I do to do a better job to make myself more presentable? I mean, we all go through that, but there's some people out there that will ask that question, and some that won't. I don't have a problem asking that question because I want to be better for myself. So, and I think
I bet you a lot of people wouldn't ask that question.
There's a lot of people that wouldn't.
Yeah, because it exposes some vulnerability of why they didn't get it.
And I think it's all how you pose it. When you pose it in that you're trying to make yourself better, it comes across as that you're actually doing that. I mean, if you're going to somebody and saying, "Why didn't you pick me?"
Right.
I mean, that's a whole other animal.
Yeah.
So if you do it in a polite, professional manner, most people are willing to say, "Well, I chose this person because of that," and that's learning. That's you can't take a negative out of that, in my opinion.
We have someone, and they asked not to use their name.
Okay.
They're considering changing a career path from media sales into real estate sales. Jerry, if you could ask Steve if I should consider a media sales transition from a field that I don't see having a future into a real estate sales career where it looks like everyone needs a home at some time in their life. Should I do this?
A good question. I think that's all.
Do you get that a lot?
I do. And, I even, back in the 2000s when it was going well, there were certain people who come to me as I'm thinking about getting a license. Could I come work with you and stuff like that? I think real estate, you've got to, number one, you got to love real estate. Number two, you got to want to learn all the time. Number three, I think more importantly, if you're going to do that, you've got to be a good people person.
Right.
And good, bad, or indifferent. If you've got to portray yourself as being as you're exuberant and you want to help and you want to do, and it's not portraying that. That's who you are as a person. And I think it depends on who you are as a person, but I can tell you if you're just starting a real estate career, make sure you've got about 6 months worth of
I was going to say the runway. That's what
the runway.
Okay, what's the runway?
The runway, I mean, and this was, I haven't heard this in over 5 years, but the runway, and I think Michael Guthrie had even mentioned this to me one time, is, make sure you get about 6 months of back, because it's going to, you figure that if you got your license tomorrow and you find somebody and you take them out for 30 days to show them, there's 30 days without any pay, you get them under contract, it's going to be sometimes 30, 60 days before they close. That's 90 days. You're at 3 months before you even know it. So good idea to have a backup plan or have a part-time job while you're getting your feet. And more importantly, what I learned, you can go to any real estate company you want to, but the most importantly is get in touch with the people that are successful in that company.
That's why he's asking, because he knows you're successful.
I mean, because those people are the people that can, hopefully the ones that are willing to are, be more than happy to share what they've done to try to be successful. Jim was always willing to share that stuff with me, and I love passing that on to people that ask.
Okay, sure. Let's turn this into a sizzle reel. This question here. Mentorship. Yeah, I mean, you enjoyed coaching your kids. Mm-hmm. You clearly are successful in what you do. Probably just about everything you do here. Mentorship in the real estate game. Do you enjoy it?
Oh, I love it. There's a newer agent with our company. He's been there like 3 years. His name's Gavin Sherwood. I'll give him some props here. Gavin, started, and he's one of those guys I could tell when he changed careers. I could tell right away he was going to go get her. He'll laugh if he's watching this. As our first interaction was, I got a call on one of my listings. He had gotten a call 10 minutes before that. And being the real estate, he goes, Steve, those people call me first. What are we going to do with this? Well, I obviously had been in the game a little bit longer. I could tell from the phone call that it didn't look like it was really going to turn into anything. And I just went, Gavin, listen, if this turns into anything, I will be glad to turn it over to you. But let's get to that stage yet. But I loved his enthusiasm, and I love that, he wanted to get that commission. So he was, calling me saying, hey, man, I got this phone call before you. And I didn't take it as an insult. I took it as, damn, this guy really wants to do a good job. Sorry, Blair, I cussed. That being said, and he's really successful. I think he's in his 4th year now, and he's starting to make it. And that's the cool part of that. And, he'll call me asking me questions. I'll call him asking questions. We've worked on a few things together. It's nice seeing somebody. He's not that, I think he's around 40, but he's a little bit younger than me. And it's nice to see him, move towards making a true career of it.
I love it. John, we got this. Paychecks do not arrive every 2 weeks. Real estate is a big leap. We work on commission. We are independent contractors. We are our own bosses. It's not for everybody. I mean,
is that Updike saying that? John, very good words. I mean, I agree with him wholeheartedly.
It's like being an entrepreneur, man. I mean, it's like such similarities with what I'm doing. And like, no, it's like what you said. It's like, 11 years in, we got our cash flows going well.
Right.
And you got the clients that need work every day.
Right.
Okay. The incremental revenue, the new clients that come in, we love those.
Right.
Okay. The ones that are like, hey, love this. This is found money.
Right.
Right.
Without a doubt. And word of mouth money.
Word of mouth money.
Right.
Word of mouth money. That's where I'm going with it. But it takes time to get to that point. And I remember early in the days, and this is the entrepreneur side, and I love connecting with entrepreneurs about this.
Right.
I remember in the early days where I would be sitting there like trying to find some business, and maybe it's over a beer,
right,
or it's at a coffee or a lunch, whatever it may be, whatever setting it is. It's like, the potential client's like, yeah, I'm leaning that way to do it with you. And at that time, I was like, I got a deal. And then I'm like, it ain't a closed deal until the John Hancock is on the piece of paper.
Correct.
I mean, put that in perspective. Like, I've got to think that's a similar struggle for young agents as well.
It's a major struggle, and there's a lot of disappointment in real estate. You can do a lot of work for somebody, and they don't end up buying something. And it's just you've got to have thick skin. You've got to understand that people. We're dealing with the most important investment in people's lives. And I think sometimes we as realtors forget about that, and we get caught up in our clients being difficult or anything. You got to remember what they're going through and what they're struggling with. I'm working with a young couple right now that's getting ready to buy, and it's a major home. It's for their family, and it's a really big deal. And she provided me with a list of questions just this morning, and I looked at that list of questions, and I know agents, and I know that some agents go, oh my gosh, look at all this. I looked at that, it was like, wow, this lady's on her game, and this is, these are all legitimate questions that any buyer that's buying a home
should be asking these
questions.
Right.
So I've had some questions, I've had some recent encounters with clients that's been very, I haven't had this before. I had a lady give me a list of questions, probably 30 questions long. asking what my percentages of sales was last year, what I sold. And I looked at it, and at first I went, good Lord, look at all these questions. But when I looked at it, I was like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to use this with getting other listings, because the data, when I went through the data and started doing it, I was like, wow, this looks really good. And
it's a leverage point for you for future business.
Without a doubt. I mean, when I started looking at, what the percentage was on what I listed things from last year and what they sold for in terms of the list price or the sold price, I didn't know that off the top of my head. And when I looked at it, I was like, wow, that was impressive. It was really neat to look at those numbers and see where you came up. And it was, and yes, I will use that to hopefully work to our advantage down the road.
I love it. We're going to get Western Albemarle's finest, Harris Tolber, into the show next question. I'll ask him one more, so I'll give you a chance to prep your question, and then we're also going to close with what you learned from the show, Harris Tolber. Want to help this, our newest team member, Blossom.
Sure.
Okay. He's someone I have tremendous respect for. This is a question that I have coming in via Twitter.
Okay.
And they said, Steve knows Crozet, and he's spoken highly of Charlottesville. I'm curious to what Steve thinks is the next market that's going to boom like Crozet has boomed.
Wow.
I think it's green.
Green's already starting to explode. Everything up the North Corridor, 29. I mean, where exactly that's going to be. I mean, Green's already. You can look at the home sales in Green. They're picking up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that work in Charlottesville that live in Greene County.
Mm-hmm.
What
about Zion's Crossroads?
Zion's Crossroads is taking off. I think you got a little bit of limitation in that area because Fluvanna has a different way they do development. They do cluster development. So if you have
what do you mean?
Cluster development, if you had 100 acres, they want you to put all your development on 25% of the property, and the rest of it's going to be kept the way it is. So they want
is that to preserve the land,
the rural nature of Fluvanna County. So, and I hope nobody shoots me for saying this, but I don't see as much development going on in Fluvanna County since they've changed that, and that's to their liking. That's what they want to do.
Because Spring Creek is Louisa?
Spring Creek is going to be Louisa.
Okay.
And that's fine too. But, I just listed a large farm in Louisa County, and that's in an area called the Green Springs Historical District, which is a conservation easement. So, those properties can't ever change. They are what they are. So I think you're going to see more development. I think that Zion's Crossroads in Spring Creek is going to do fine. That's a planned urban development, and that'll do fine. I don't know how much more of that you'll see out that way. But Richmond's getting closer and closer every day.
Isn't it going to be a time where Richmond and Charlottesville are just connected on 64?
You're almost there now. I sold a house for a friend of mine last year that was in Goochland, and so yes, I think it's getting closer, and the people that bought that worked in Charlottesville. So yeah, that 60-mile gap is getting closer and closer every day.
I've been thoroughly enjoying this. Harris Tolber, question for Steve White.
All right, my question for Mr. White is, if you could go back and give yourself one bit of career advice when you first started out, what one thing of advice or encouragement would you give to yourself?
That's a good question.
Really good question. I think, and I'm not trying to beat up on Roy Wheeler when I say this, but when I first started at Roy Wheeler, we really didn't have very much of an education program. And so one thing about Roy Wheeler, I think that since Michael Guthrie has been there, is the education level. And Michael brings a lot of new agents into the business. And I think that when I got my license, you go and get your state exam, you go and get hired by a real estate company, and then you go sell real estate. And there was no training. I didn't even know when I looked at a contract. I saw third party first trust and second party first. I had no idea what that stuff meant. There was no training for that. Where I think if I was going to start a career today, the most important thing that I'd want to do 100% would be to make sure I was going to a company that had a good training program that would teach me how to write contracts. Remember, we're writing legal contracts that are legally enforceable, so you need to be doing that in a correct manner. And I just think that is the key to it. And then find somebody within the company you're working with that is approachable, that is successful, and try to pick their brain and figure out what they're doing to be successful. The ones I found that are the most successful in Charlottesville, the agents that I have a lot of admiration for, high-level agents.
For example?
Lynn Mayhew, Steve McLean, Jim Faulkner, Frank Quayle.
These are big-time agents.
Frank Hardy. All these guys are big-time agents, and not one of them is not approachable. And I've worked with all of them on different transactions over the years. And, you know, some people I think get into business and say, oh, that guy's not approachable. He's way too big. No, these guys, you know, these guys want to help you. They want people to be successful as well. So I hope that answers it.
I think that those three things are like crucial for, you know, learning any skill. One, like, you know, throw yourself into the water a little bit and, you know, teach yourself how to swim.
Without a doubt.
But also to have somebody giving you some proper training. And
training's key for our business.
Exactly. And then thirdly, like you said, like find a mentor, find somebody who's been there, done that, and can like pass on that wisdom to you.
Well, and I'll just, you know, quick prop here. Jim Bonner, when I first started, I couldn't figure out, you know, Jim would come to me and goes, hey, I've got this listing. Do you want to work on this together? And I kept going, where are you getting all these phone calls? I can't figure out how you're getting all these, because my phone wasn't ringing. And he's like, well, I do these mass mailings. And so we got into
direct
this
mail?
conversation, direct mailings. Yeah. And so I started getting into this, you know, direct mailing stuff. And wow, I mean, what a big difference that makes. And it sometimes, you know, you send out that and, you know, you might have spent $5,000 on that mailing. No, it's not.
We do this for our clients is we design the direct mail.
Right.
And we make sure the call to action looks good.
Right.
And direct mail can be anywhere from Valpak, that might be on the lower end of, lack of a better phrase, the pizzazz or the je ne sais quoi or the sex appeal. The ones that you guys are talking about are a nice hard stock, glossy, two-sided, oftentimes that are maybe talking about sales history of what you've done and a new one that's coming on the market that may appeal to somebody.
Yeah, I
love those.
Well, with Jim and I we just send a letter with a business card, and then we usually have a color brochure that on the front side of it's usually got what we've got currently on the market, on the back side, just an example of sales from the year before. And it, you know, I can tell you when 2009 rolled around and I did that and I spent like $7,000 on it and I had one phone call, I stopped it because I was like, this is ridiculous. But the market started to change again, and as the market started to change, we started doing it more, and it works.
Well, and I think why it really works is because there's not much competition in that category of marketing. A lot of the agents that are, from what I've seen, and this is what I do professionally, a lot of what the agents are maybe more focused on the social media and digital marketing and more focused on having a nice, spiffy-looking website, and that's critically important. I don't want to marginalize the services that we provide.
Right.
Okay, but there's not a good example of this, and I'm not to highlight someone that's, you know, it's competition, is Robert Russo does a really good job with the direct mailings in the Redfields community where I live.
Without a doubt,
and he's cornered that market, and he wants to maintain that market share. And how he's maintaining that market share is leveraging his marketing and branding play to kind of put a fence up, a proverbial fence around the hood.
Yeah, he does. And Robert does a great job with his marketing. You know, the one thing that we have found out with those letters, you know, you might send a letter to somebody for 5 years and you never hear from them. But the thing is, the consistency of that letter is that we'll get these calls from somebody that's been in their property for 10, 20, 30 years, and they'll say, you know, we're just at the beginning stages, but we've been getting these letters from you for 5 years. And we felt like, even though we know somebody else, we felt like we ought to have you here. So it works, without a doubt. It's just, you know, it's commitment to do it right and commitment to money to make it happen. So.
I love it. Well, we're 65 minutes in. You've crushed it.
Wow, I've crushed it.
You've crushed
it. I've got to head to a photo shoot next.
Steve White has crushed it. All right, we're going to get, before we get to you, Harrison, what you've learned from the interview here, I want to create a sizzle reel for Steve. We'll have you interact with that camera here.
Okay.
And it's going to be on a question that you're going to hit a home run on. What is it that you love about being a real estate agent in Charlottesville and Central Virginia?
Okay. Well, I mean, I really love being a realtor here in Central Virginia, helping people find the right property for their needs. Whether that's a townhome or whether that's finding a piece of land to begin from scratch. I just have really enjoyed. I never was going to be the guy that was going to be a 9-to-5, sit behind a desk guy, and I realized that when I was in my 20s. So being able to be in this business and work on different projects day to day just fits my lifestyle. And I love having the flexibility with my schedule to be able to do some of the things I like to do too. So
I love it. I love the same thing as well. Harris Tolber, what did you learn from, I think, what is a utterly fantastic show today? What did you learn from Steve White in this show?
Well, you know, we've had a lot of Roy Wheeler Realtors on here, and the one characteristic that holds true of, I think, Realtors in general is, especially a successful one, is that they're approachable. They come off very trustworthy. They're likable. And, you know, I think Mr. White obviously holds all of these traits. I think one thing I'd like to comment on was when y'all were talking about sports, you know, Jared was saying he might eventually get into coaching his son. I think that in my experience, it's all about positive reinforcement.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely, because looking back, I had coaches that had different coaching styles, and the ones I remember that really lifted me up and just like gave me that encouragement to pursue a passion, which for me was soccer growing up, are the ones who, rather than negatively reinforcing my mistakes, would positively reinforce my successes. And that made all the difference for me.
Are we giving love to Paul Rittenhouse right there?
Yeah, a little bit of Paul Rittenhouse. One coach if I had to give a shout out to would be Jeff Ballnave. He was the first coach that really Albemarle coach, assistant coach at Albemarle. Yeah, love him. But yeah, that's my little bit of 2 cents right there.
There you go.
The positive reinforcement is a huge thing for the kids. You need to keep them focused, but being positive. I had a kid that I coached in basketball, and obviously won't bring names, but he was not the best basketball player that I'd ever worked with before. But I never, and I'll never forget him as long as I live. And I see the kid now. He works at Dooners, and which is one of my favorite restaurants in town.
Yeah.
And he remembers me, and every time he sees me, he says, "Hey, Coach White, how are you doing?" And he doesn't remember me because he certainly wasn't the best basketball player I had. I had kids that were way more talented than him, but that kid worked his butt off every single day. He was polite. He was kind. He was just, and I loved him. I mean, and that's, and he got, we were playing for the Y, so it was all equal playing time. But I made sure even if it hadn't been equal playing time, that kid was going to be on the court
because he earned it.
He gave 100% to me.
Yeah.
Now, were you ever going to see him play high school ball? Hell no, we weren't going to see him play high school ball. But on the long shot, he was, and that brings me more joy than anything. Is a kid that'll remember me just because I did a good job for him, not because I did anything for him, just because, there are coaches out there that probably shouldn't be coaching, but I enjoy kids, so that's me.
Dude, I like some Steve White, man. This guy's a cool dude. You are a cool.
Thank you. I enjoyed meeting you guys.
Seriously, cool dude. This has been fun.
It's been fun.
Yeah,
very enjoyable.
Guys, Steve White. I think this guy obviously has made a positive impact in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. I'm grateful for his time on this program. We close the show the same way every time with two things we'd like for you to consider. One is if you give more than you take, you will make our community a better place, and you'll probably win in the end. Give more than you take. The second thing, and it's not about religion, it's just the golden rule in general. Ladies and gentlemen, if you embody the golden rule and you treat others like you want to be treated yourself, you will also make our community a better place. And I think Charlottesville, Virginia right now needs us to embody both of those. Give more than you take and embody the golden rule. In Charlottesville, we will take and we will return Charlottesville to the form we know she deserves and the form we know that she absolutely embodies. For Steve White, for Harris Tolber, for Judah Wickower, for Lauren Linsky, my name is Jerry Miller. It is the I Love CVille Show on the I Love CVille Network. We thoroughly enjoy connecting with you on this platform, and we will see you mañana at 12:30. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. So good. No, it was good. It was fun. I don't know if 6
minutes. You did a great job. We're going to get a photo from you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
And then we're going to syndicate it.
That's so cool that you bought from Joe, because Joe.
This place right here. I will tell you, once we are